I'm licensed to practice law only in the state of Georgia, and thus all of the discussion we're going to have about adoption law and procedure is based solely on Georgia law. The laws of your particular state may vary widely from Georgia, so these informative interviews are not to be used as a substitute for sound legal advice by a qualified adoption attorney, and are not to be construed as creating an attorney-client privilege or relationship solely based on these interviews.
So let's talk step-parent adoption.
Okay.
Let's assume that a father wants to adopt a child, but the biological father is not listed on the birth certificate. Do we still have to worry about biological father rights there?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm assuming you're talking about like a husband who wants to adopt his stepchild, or a wife who wants to adopt her stepchild. And that happens quite frequently. But there was a biological father or mother there at some point, and their rights must be terminated prior to the finalization of an adoption.
So assuming a biological father never legitimated the child, and he's 7 years old now and hasn't been any biological father for over 5 years, so then what?
Well, Georgia has what's called a window of opportunity that a biological father has in order to legitimate the child. And the father must petition the court to legitimate the child within that window of time. And some judges have ruled that the window of opportunity, so to speak, actually begins before the birth of the child and can be prenatal abandonment as well as postnatal abandonment. Oftentimes there's no visitation or very little, no child support paid, maybe a little bit withheld from an income tax refund, that sort of thing. But in order to have those parental rights terminated, we have to prove that in court, that there's been no significant contact and no child support. But in order to object to the adoption, say by a stepfather or a stepmother, the biological father must petition to legitimate that child. And if he has failed to do those things that's necessary to be a parent, be there for the child, pay for the child, that sort of thing, the judge won't approve the legitimation. And in order to object and successfully object to an adoption, he has to be a legitimate father. Someone who's waited so many years to legitimate, who fails frequently to visit with the child or pay child support, they're in danger of that window of opportunity slamming shut.
So if a biological father never paid any child support, does that help the case?
Oh, absolutely. Georgia requires a parent to support their child, even if there's no court order. I often have people say, well, I didn't have a court order to pay child support. Doesn't matter. In the eyes of the law in Georgia, you're required to support your child and to be there as a parental figure for your child. Failure to pay child support can be a reason for termination of rights.
So when it comes to step-parent adoption, how much does that process cost?
It depends, but each case truly does stand on its own. As to the attorney fees and the cost to finalize an adoption, sometimes the judge will require a home study of a stepfather, step-parent. Sometimes they don't require a home study. Sometimes the biological father or the legal mother is easy to find. Sometimes they're impossible to find. So the length and complexity of the case, that's what drives the cost of an adoption. And step-parent adoptions, by the way, are the only one not covered under the federal adoption tax credit, unfortunately.